last session of the day. Is that right? Am I right? Yes, okay. We've been hearing some great talks, and obviously, last but not least, oh wait, it's another session. I should introduce myself. Keep forgetting that. I'm Katie Selhorst. I work for Landcare Australia. I'm the head of landscape restoration. I'm also their chief drone remote pilot, whatever that acronym is, I can never remember. Tech is my thing. I love this session. It's been a great day, but I'll stop talking because I'm not the highlight. This is Dr. Elia, and she's going to be talking about building biolinks, using citizen science, AI, and teamwork to connect the Grampians and the Pyrenees. So please take away.
All right, thank you very much. I hope my talk today can be a bit of an inspiring answer to the question we had in the panel session just before around what AI and tech can actually contribute to land care and our current goals. So I am going to be talking about tech, but not yet, because first I want to start with what are our goals in land care. My name's Elia. I come from the Upper Wimmera. I'm the land care facilitator in the Upper Wimmera region on Job Wurrung country, and I'm going to be rolling back to the reason land care formed, which is the idea that we want to come together as farms, as communities and individuals, and tackle problems that are too large for us to solve on our own property, on our one patch. Soil erosion, salinity, these were the reasons our farmers came together originally. And what my land care region really wants to focus on is really one of the biggest of those problems affecting us on a continent-wide, global-wide scale, and that is habitat loss. So this is the image I start every single talk with. It's an image from a Victorian government planning tool called Nature Kit. Basically, all you need to know is every color represents a different type of habitat that used to exist in Victoria. The rusty red is native grasslands. And this is what covered our state pre-1750. And I'm going to jump forward to today. So everything that's gone white is now, that landscape has changed so much we can't see any evidence of that original habitat type. I think this tells the story a lot better than any words as far as why our biodiversity in Victoria, in Australia, and across the globe are facing such challenges. That habitat loss is the reason behind the majority of threatened species on the IUCN list, for instance. So this is the big problem. This is what it looks like on a landscape scale. What does it look like for an individual animal? This is the adorable squirrel glider and the beautiful hooded robin, two species that were once very abundant in the area where I come from, in the Upper Wimmera, which is just near the Grampians National Park, if you need a reference point. And that's what the landscape used to look like around the Grampians region. Open woodlands, really rich flowering understories, grasslands. So for a squirrel glider that loves nectar and bugs, plenty to choose from. Plenty of trees within 30 meters apart for them to glide between. Their little feetsies never have to touch the ground. Same for the hooded robin, an insectivorous bird. And let's fast forward to today. We have a landscape that's much more familiar to us now. And we might have very lush, productive pastures now, replacing a lot of that habitat. And some of our native species love that, like our kangaroos. But if we think about a species like the squirrel glider or the hooded robin, what now exists between the tree they're on and that next patch of habitat across the farm, there's nothing in there for them that they need. Nest hollows, nectar-bearing plants, bugs. And what's worse than that is it's really hard for them to cross that landscape now. The glider, the trees are too far apart. And we now have invasive species like cats and foxes, making that path even more treacherous. So when I think about habitat loss and our native species, what I like to think about instead of this landscape is islands, basically, surrounded by an ocean of human modification. And so this is the challenge, but so what's the solution? I know this sounds simplistic, but how do humans connect islands? We build bridges, Golden Gate Bridge. And of course, in conservation, we actually have a way to build bridges. We call them biolinks. They're habitat bridges. They look something like this, where you're planting trees to connect disparate habitat islands that have become small and isolated, leading to those species populations becoming small and isolated and inbred. And this is what we need for, what I didn't mention before is our squirrel gliders and our hooded robins. They're now both threatened species. So we're thinking globally. What do we want to do to reverse biodiversity loss, repair our landscape for these species on a global level? This is where the idea of really large-scale Biolinks projects comes in. And lucky for my land care network, we don't have to think at that level because there are organizations doing that, like the Great Eastern Ranges Initiative, which is thinking on a continent-wide scale. Where do we need to put new habitat in green to connect all the islands that go from the Cape York Peninsula through past the Grampians to South Australia? You know, a lot of really good research work going into that. This doesn't really help my land care group know what we want to do, though. So my land care region wanted a bit more guidance than the really big map. So in 2013, we got help from Biolinks Alliance and some other partners to try and refine this map of where we want to connect islands. And they did a study sort of narrowing in on some corridors between the Grampians National Park and the Pyrenees ranges about where we might get the most bang for our buck if we plant trees there. Now, could I hand this map to my land care groups and say, you guys are good to go, you know what you're doing for the next 10 years? Still too high level. So when I started my role as land care facilitator, what my groups told me that they want to go from this map, which is a really good start, but they want to get down to the local blueprint level. Okay, how do we do that? Let's think back about the problem we're trying to solve. We want to plant trees, but the goal of planting those trees is to restore habitat, and we want to restore it where it's most needed. We don't want to just put the trees where it's easy. We want to put it where those threatened species need it, where the squirrel gliders need it to access new habitat, where the hooded robins need it to find new places to forage. And so this is a huge question if you're talking about restoring all the habitat of Victoria and helping all the species at once. It's too big. You don't even know where to start. So in conservation science, we have a little trick, and it's indicator species. We shrink the problem. Instead of thinking about all the species in our area, we pick one, tends to be a lot more sensitive to human disturbance than other species. We're not going to pick a magpie or a stumpy-tailed lizard. We're going to pick one that if it's doing poorly, it's like the first one you notice doing poorly. But if it's doing well, it means there's a huge guild of other species also doing well. And that 2013 study I mentioned that Biolinks Alliance helped us with, they identified a list of good indicator species we could start with, including squirrel gliders and a guild of small woodland birds, included hooded robin. So we answer that question of where is the habitat needed by just focusing on these guys to try and simplify the problem. And now our ingredients to creating our Biolinks blueprint are kind of straightforward. We want to know where are the habitat islands. We can look at satellite images, but we're thinking about what is the habitat requirements for the squirrel glider. They need nest hollows. For the hooded robin, they need certain insect biodiversity. So then we want to go out and ground truth. What is the habitat like on those islands? How good are the islands? And the final ingredient is where are the islands already occupied? Once you have that map, it actually becomes a lot more intuitive to say, well, this is where we want to plant our connections. We want to connect this population here. And that means we need to talk to the farmer who owns this block of land. So this is how we get to the actionable blueprint. And this is how we go from, the continent-wide solution, keep this in our heads. This is our goal, but we can focus down to our catchment, and within our catchment, each of our land care groups can focus down onto their local area. So that's great in theory. That's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people, a lot of potential partners. Obviously, what we need is a way to work together. And when I started my role, I spent a lot of time. My land care groups have been talking about doing this Biolinks project for a while, since before 2013. So my first question to them was, what's holding you back? And the biggest thing holding them back, they reckoned, was we just need a coordinated team approach. We need to figure out a way to kind of bring all these different people together. And like this, for instance, represents my network, but we've also got the Upper Mount Emu Creek Land Care Network and the Upper Hopkins Land Care Network across 2 different CMA regions. So what we did as a first step, we just applied for some money to buy catering and some venue costs, and we just made a thing. We called it Biolinks Team. And the idea of Biolinks Team is we would have a couple representatives from all these groups. We would get together and share some food and share some ideas and talk about what we needed to be able to be consistently working towards Biolinks in the same way, but within our patch. So the Biolinks team includes myself and a couple other facilitators, a representative or 2 from each of our land care groups. There's up to 15 of them in our region. And what the Biolinks team does is we sort of think about what's our shared vision. We brainstorm what we need to achieve that shared vision. We develop tools and systems that will fill those needs. And we train up in our team so that those Biolinks team members can go back to their land care group and share the tools, the training. Biolinks team also thinks more about the bigger picture funding side of things. Can we approach philanthropy, for instance? We can approach the larger organizations for scientific advice. So this Biolinks team kind of sits in the middle and has become a really important connector. So we start with Biolinks team, and our very first session was really getting into, you as my land care groups keep telling me you really want to be planting trees strategically. You want to be working together with your neighbor land care group. So what's stopping you from doing that right now? And the main thing was a map. Our land care groups didn't have a shared map that everybody could put their data on. They could look at it all together, and they could, a lot of them didn't even have their own map of their own data to look at it visually. So that was job number 1. We want a map that's shared. We want the data to be consistent. So now it's time for the techs. Tech number 1 that has really, really, I think, helped our land care network organization and our land care groups start tackling this is an app called Fulcrum. It is a paid service, unfortunately, but it's been pretty great for us. And this is a screenshot of our shared map that all our groups can see now. We run it out of QGIS, but basically, what our land care groups have now is an app on their phones, really simple drag and drop polygon mapping, and very simple, enter fields. When they enter fields on their phone app, it automatically pops up into the big group app. And so with this, we can start getting those ingredients for Biolinks. Where are the islands? How good are the islands? Where are the islands occupied? This is an image of our land care facilitator team and one of our key Biolink members practicing and testing out a standard habitat quality survey that we're all going to use together that helps us collect that ingredient, how good are the islands? And it runs through Fulcrum, and it pops up onto our map. Okay, how about the next ingredient? Where are the islands occupied? For a long time, species biodiversity monitoring has been the domain of trained ecologists, and we got started with the help of a trained ecologist, Dr. Chris Pockney, there he is, who came out and did squirrel glider surveying for us, trained up our small field team at our network organization, and you can see all the wonderful stars up there of squirrel glider records we've gotten through that model of that sort of trained ecologist, small trained team model. And that's excellent, but we want to be collecting data across this whole area. So this isn't really something that scales, across a large area. We need to find a way to open up species biodiversity monitoring to more than just us trained ecologists. And also, we have a ton of people who want to help. We have so many keen volunteers who really badly want to be involved in this sort of work. This is one of our first volunteer squirrel glider survey teams that went out. So the question becomes, is there a technology that can allow these people to participate in this biodiversity monitoring? To answer this question, I'm going to just tell you about a couple people in our community and some things that they're already using for their own interest. And these are slightly anonymized, but real people. All these stories come from actual people in my land care networks. Let's say we've got Phoebe here. She really loves going on walks. She takes her cute little doggy. She loves flowers. She loves taking pictures of the flowers. She doesn't know a whole lot about species identification and kind of just assumed it's not really something that, is within her field of expertise. Her mate tells her about iNaturalist. I hope this isn't the first time Anyone's heard about a naturalist? And she realizes that she can take a picture of a cool flower, and the AI model inside of iNaturalist tells her what it is. And that's already pretty cool. Then what's even cooler is within a day, she gets a real human who chimes in on that thread and gets her all the way down to species level. And then she realizes there's some humans on iNaturalist who must spend all day long doing this for people. And they are a treasure. And then one day Phoebe posts a cool flower, and not only does she get a human helping ID it, she gets a human commenting on it, telling her, that's a species we only just described, and you've just gotten a new record for it. And so at this point, she's now hooked because, not only is she taking pretty pictures of flowers, she's helping discover new locations of newly described flowers. And this is now Phoebe's impact map on iNaturalist, all the places that she has been sampling. She's on the leaderboard. She's beating me on the leaderboard. She is using iNaturalist for her own personal education enrichment. Okay, next up we've got James. James loves birds, but he's not very good at bird calls. He sees an ad online for this thing called a bird puck and thinks, I'll buy that. I'll hook it up on my porch. Maybe it'll tell me a bit more about the birds living at my house. So he does. He hooks it up on his porch. It starts recording live. It runs a little AI model that tells him what birds are calling right now. He hops into his feed in this nice little app, and he scrolls all the way down to the uncommon birds that haven't been detected that much. And oh my gosh, he sees his favorite bird there. I can't quite see it from here. He sees a rainbow bee eater, and that's pretty exciting. He's never managed to get a picture of one. And the app lets him set a little alert so that the next time it hears a rainbow bee eater, it actually texts him and says, "Bee eater calling now." And he sets that, and it texts him, and he runs outside and he sees the bee eater, and he gets the picture, and where does he put it? iNaturalist. So those are two stories of people who are not part of my Biolinks team. They are using these technologies for their own education and enrichment. But what's so great about these technologies is they have open source databases, standardized with metadata, location, season, time, and all that stuff is available to Biolinks team. We hop on our laptops, we hop onto iNaturalist where all this data is feeding, where all those taxonomists are spending far too much time getting that data to research grade. And Biolinks team is adding its own data in through our Fulcrum app. And what we have now is, one map to rule them all, running through QGIS at the moment. But it's bringing in that community-derived data, folks who aren't even necessarily realizing they're part of our project. And what this means is we've got the wider community. They're providing that data and people power to our Biolinks team. They're giving us the ingredients we need to build that blueprint. Where are the islands? How good are the islands? And who's living on the islands? But what's really, I think, exciting about this approach is Biolinks team then is sharing the story of how we're using that data, and that is attracting more people. Biolinks team is running workshops in their community. They're telling people about iNaturalist and the bird pucks, and I haven't even started talking about trail cameras. And we get people who are hearing that and being like, oh, that's cool. Can I have one on my block? And so in that way, we sort of have this nice cycle of community providing data and our land cares providing training, connection, and a mission for these people who are pursuing their curiosity, no matter what. Like, they're curious people, and we're giving them a way to sort of direct that curiosity into our high priority areas. So this is the vision. To be fully, honest, we're very early in this project, and it's been a long time getting to this point. And this is the first year where I feel like we as a Biolinks team are really kind of making that first big step towards this coordinated landscape-wide data collection. This year we had our first set of land care grants. We all submitted coordinated land care grants to fund off-grid bird puck stations for our land care groups to put at historic revegetation sites. We also ran workshops with the land care groups to tell more of the community about it. I actually have a list waiting for me to follow up on of about 12 people who were at the workshop who want to go in on a coordinated purchase of those because they were very excited about them. And the other highlight this year has been our first official Biolink plant out. So the first time that we really sat together, and rather than saying, okay, who's put in an EOI for re-veg, who wants re-veg, we look at our map and we say, here's the islands, here's where the squirrel gliders are. I don't think that's on anymore. And let's cold contact a farm. If I had a laser pointer, I'd show you where it was. Let's cold contact the farmer and see if we can approach them with this story of the squirrel glider. And we got really lucky on our first go because the farmers were so enthusiastic. They finished the fencing in like 2 weeks after a phone call. So that was really invigorating for our land care group and the people who have been putting in so much work into getting us to this point. So I will leave it at that. If anyone wants to do more tech talk, I brought my toys with me. You can play with the bird puck or with fulcrum. And yes, come find me. Thank you.
Very good. Oh my goodness. Any questions, Demi? Couple. We've got time for a couple.
Thank you. This one's a bit of a tech one, sorry, especially with the AI.
Tech question, yeah.
So I'm a rotocologist. So my name's Chris Johnson. Now, with the bird puck especially, is that has an inbuilt AI software, correct?
Yeah, so bird puck is using the BirdNet from Cornell Uni model.
How are you finding its detection ability? Because I say this because I have built my own recognizers, and you do need to understand. Well, the AI stuff is very tricky because when you build recognizers, you need to understand the false positives, the false negatives, the true positives, whether or not it's actually detecting it, and I suppose how accurate that detection is. Because BirdNet clips things into little 3-second segments. If it cuts it a call partway through, it can say it's a different species.
Yep. So with the bird puck, the things that allow us to overcome some of that, AI models should never be seen as the end-all be-all. They are tools to help us do better, and I should have said this during my talk, they're tools to help people who don't feel qualified to participate to join in. So with the bird puck, what's nice about it is it saves all the recordings. And if you start to learn your bird calls as you use it, and you start to notice when it insists an osprey just called, but no, it was a magpie. And what we want to do, to keep it short, is we have a whole bunch of bird nerds in our area that will be our vetting force. So we move these records to a naturalist, and then they check them for us. Yeah.
I'll just add to that. You can also set a confidence interval on the bird puck.
Yeah. You can say don't include anything. There's probability of location, and there's confidence of the sound matching. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, we don't want these to just be running out there by themselves. Like, we want humans involved in the process. And so that's where having our force of, bird experts watching these records, that brings in a whole community participating.
I think on the next question. Loved your presentation, my favourite one for the day.
Thank you.
And the way you used the artwork at the start was just brilliant.
Thank you.
Picture just tells so many words. Just quickly on the GIS, like, we are a land care network too that has always thought, should we have a GIS system? Who's going to run it? Do we have so love that you found something that looked simple. What is the advantage of what you've chosen over just saying using Google Earth?
Yep. So the goal is to make it look simple for the land care members. It doesn't always look simple from my end. So it does require the land care facilitators kind of playing that role of kind of driving the main engine. So we're using QGIS right now because it's free. The reason that we're using QGIS and Fulcrum rather than something like Google Earth is because I'm finding, I went looking at a lot of things and nothing had the like collaborative features that I was looking for. Fulcrum's nice because everybody can have the exact same form on their phones, and they have like a live link where the data on all these different licenses, you can just have live link to your QGIS project. But QGIS is not a tool I would ever give to my land care groups to use because it makes me want to cry sometimes. So what we're setting up now, and I've only got a couple of them set up, but for anyone who wants to see, I can show you. We're setting up web maps using the QGIS to web plugin so that the land care groups can still see their data, but they don't have to muck around in the back end of Fulcrum or QGIS. They hop into their web map that's interactive. I've curated it. And then the other way they get their data back from Fulcrum, because I've set it up so that they can even enter everything that they enter into Fulcrum can basically fill out their CMA reporting, is the other little carrot. And they can get that data through Excel or Google Sheets, spreadsheets, so that what they're interacting with is the nice kind of curated. But then the facilitators have to
All right, we'll do
use
one
the
more. We have time
annoying
for,
stuff.
well, we don't really have time, but I'm going to allow one more question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. I just wanted to ask, have you been able to apply this for platypus because it's called platypus? And
Yeah.
also, have there been applications for being able to identify invasives and using it as a deterrent?
Yeah, so to the platypus question, I get asked a lot, how are the platypus going? We actually don't have platypus in our catchment anymore. And what's devastating is a lot of my land care members remember when there were platypus. So our name has become an aspirational name that the project is maybe in 100 years, they're back. But it has been a main motivation for my land care groups really wanting to pursue this Biolinks approach because we still have squirrel gliders. You know, we still have some of these other species. And as far as the second half of your question, absolutely, like trail cameras, which I didn't have time to talk about today, are really great in invasive species monitoring. And I will tell you, I'm cheating a little bit in my land care network for all the cool like tech and stuff I'm able to try out because my husband works in AI technology and is like experimenting with lots of little AI-powered devices that are doing predator deterrent and things like that. So yeah, there's a huge overlap between conservation goals and farming goals in pest control. It's probably the biggest win-win there is, yeah.
All right. Well, please, round of applause.
Thanks, everyone.
Sorry, I know we didn't get to all the questions, but please, corner, talk, tech. Thank you. Have a